Hey guys, I've had the RMX 1000 for a couple of weeks, and what I'm going to do is in this video, I'm going to give you a full run through of how it works and just show you it just in case you ever rock up to a club and you see one of these things. I'm seeing them more and more now, which is interesting because this is actually old tech. This is like 10, 12 years old, okay? But for some reason, they're kind of seeing this resurgence. I don't know if that's a word or not at the moment, and you're seeing them all over the place. So I'm going to give you the top level stuff that you would need to know if you rocked up and saw this, what to touch, what not to touch, and if you should touch it at all. One last thing before we get into this video. Last video I did last week, everyone was like, you should get a good quality mic. I've got one here. I don't actually think the sound quality is that much better, so I'd love to know your comments below. Maybe I need to get a better one of these. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so here it is. Now, the very first thing I want to tell you, because I DJ'd with this thing live for the first time, and straight out the gate, the thing that actually really got on my got on my nerves, is that the noise effect was too loud in comparison to the music I was playing. In other words, it just overpowered the music. So I'm just going to straight away tell you this, because this was the thing I wish someone had told me on the night. This sub parameter here also acts as a volume for noise. So if I turn this up a little bit, that's the first top tip I'm going to give you. So if your white noise is way too loud, turn the sub parameter all the way down. In my experience, it's best to turn it all the way down to the bottom. Now, the next thing, if it's still too loud, you now have to balance these two. You've got the input here and the output here. So what you sometimes have to do if your volume is too loud is turn down the output of this and increase the input here, and that'll balance it out. So keep your mixer at the kind of standard volume, obviously not so it's clipping and in the red, and then you want to balance those two out. This is just really important because it's just the thing that will annoy you the most if you go to use white noise and it's overpowering of the music. So that's the first thing I need to tell you. The second thing is, because I think you'll probably use this for noise quite a lot, especially if you've got a V10 mixer, which doesn't have the noise effect, that'll be your go-to. Obviously, if you have an A9 mixer or the Nexus 2, that'll have white noise on it, so you probably wouldn't use that as much. But another thing that's interesting about this one feature here is when you turn it up, the subparameter 2 will add this cool LFO effect to the noise. Which is really cool, because now when you add that white noise in, you can also really, really cool stuff. Okay, so that's one of the things you'll probably use this thing for the most. Now, the second thing which I want to tell you, which I wish somebody had told me as well, this thing here is really interesting. Okay, this switch here has 3 different stop effects: vinyl break, echo, or spin back. And if you hit it, it creates that effect. Now, it has what you'd call a slip mode on it. So if you hit this, the track continues to play at its normal speed underneath. So I could hit this, the track hasn't actually stopped. The track is still playing, and as soon as you take your finger off, it'll snap to the point it should be as the track continues playing. Now, you might say, well, why is that interesting? It's interesting because this also acts as a kill switch for all other effects here. Now, I'll tell you why that is interesting, because there's 3 different velocities to this. You can just touch it, and it won't really do anything. It won't do anything at all. Or you can touch it lightly, and it'll introduce these effects very slowly. Then if you touch it down to the next level, it'll introduce the effect quicker, and if you touch it really down, it'll happen really down. If you press it down all the way, it'll happen really quickly. So let me put it on backspin, and I'll show you this to you. So I'm just going to touch it a little bit. Same thing with echo. So it's really cool. Now you know that. The interesting thing is how it will kill everything over here. So let's say, for example, and I'm going to come on to this in more detail, I put Isolator on, which activates these 3 knobs as an EQ, and I turned the lows down because it's building to the drop. I'm taking away the lows. I'm beginning to add in a bit of white noise over here. I'm adding a bit of a parameter in over here. I might be beginning to boost the highs maybe, and I've got all these different things going on. And something that's very frustrating for DJs sometimes is you make all these adjustments just before the build, and at the last moment, you've got to go and change all the adjustments back, turn the noise off, put the low bend back up, change everything, right? And there's even more you can do on this, which I'm going to come on to. This is a kill switch. So let's say you've taken the lows out, you're adding a bit of white noise, and just before the drop hits, you just want to kill it all. You hit that and it all goes. I can demonstrate it here with white noise. And it's gone. Now, this is also really interesting because I didn't know this. So I added in white noise, but notice what happens if you add it in and then turn it off. It remains there for a bit. There's almost like a tail to it. You hear that echo? And what you never want as a DJ is you add these effects in, just before the build, you take it away, or just before the drop, you take it away, and that effect bleeds into your drop. You don't want that. You want it to die instantly. You've got some reverb on a track as well, and you add it in. When the drop hits, you don't want any reverb. You want the drop to hit hard by taking all the effects off. Let me just go back here and I'll show you. It sounds so much cleaner when you kill that reverb dead. Okay, so that's the next most interesting thing on this, okay? Now let's talk about something else which you're going to use the most. You've got these lows, mids, and highs, and you've got different effects for each of them, okay? Now you want to just keep kind of input on an X pad just to keep that lit up. The other thing this thing will do is it'll also just detect the BPM for you, right? So that's just there. And if it gets it wrong, you can tap it along, or you can nudge it, right? And you can get it back in place. If it's not doing it, make sure you've got quantize and auto turn on. You don't really need to do much more about that. Now with this, if music is playing and nothing is selected at the top, these three will do nothing. Okay, nothing. But if you want it to act as an EQ, you can hit it on and it'll flash. Now if I take the low end out, and they're kill, by the way, they're not, what would I call, not like kill, but like infinite. So if I turn them all down to 0, there will be no leakage coming through, okay? As you know, some EQs on DJ decks only do like a minus 26 decibel. This goes all the way down. Now you might say, why would I want a master EQ when I'm DJing? The reason you want a master EQ is because sometimes you're playing a club and the low end is just way too big. I've had it many times where I go and play a nightclub and the low end is just booming and it's almost ruining the songs. So I could just come in and just go, I'm going to take out some of the low end on this, right? Or, of course, you're going to do stuff like a build's happening. You can take the low end out so it thins the track out before the drop, and then you bring the low end back. But sometimes it's good just to EQ the room you're playing, right? Now, bear in mind, if you do the kill switch, that EQing is gone, so you'd have to give it a little nudge again for it to kick back in. So another thing for you to know, if you hit the kill switch, all you have to do then is go and reactivate something or go and hit the isolator button again, and then you're straight back to it, okay? The next thing, I'm just going to talk about these for a bit. You have different effects here: cut or add, trans or roll, gate or drive. You might say, well, how is there 2 in 1? This is really interesting. The one at the top will happen if you turn it to the left. So if I turn the highs to the left, it will have a gate effect. If I turn it to the right, it will have a drive effect. Same with the mids, same with the lows. Same thing with trans or roll. To the left, trans, to the right, roll. Add or cut down here. Okay, so you now understand. Top is to the left, bottom is to the right, okay? So that's really relevant because, again, didn't know that when I first turned up to a club. Now, just to kind of run you through these effects, relatively straightforward. Drive is overdrive, it's saturation, it's, what would you call it? Distortion, essentially. So you can hear if I play this now, and this isn't going to be the best quality because I'm recording this through this microphone thing I've got, but I'll play it to you so you can hear it. I don't know whether it's coming through well. It adds drive. Gate is interesting. Gate is probably one of the most interesting DJ effects. What it does is when music is playing, there's peaks. So it's music, sound wave sounds like this, and then there's peaks. It's like doof, 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 like this, okay? The louder bits. What gate does is it says, it almost like, think of it like a threshold that you bring down. And what it begins to do is it says, we're only going to allow that sound through now. Everything above this line we're letting through. So as you bring it down, it'll allow more and more. But it takes the peaks. Now, what's interesting about this is when you add it in, you could almost isolate. If there's a bass line and a kick drum, you could isolate just the kick drum by turning down the lows. Let me see if I can go to the beginning of this track where there's a bass line introduced, and I'm going to show you what happens if I gate it. Okay, it's not the best sound quality, but you can hear what it's done is it's just let through the transients, the kick, the bass, the hi-hats, right? Which is really cool, because if you've got this kind of hi-hat shuffle, you can solo out just the hi-hat. So listen. Don't know if it's the best sound quality, but I'm going to move on. Trans effect is a stutter. Let's have a listen. And I'm going to do it just on, it's difficult this, I'm going to do it on the high end. It's not the best effect. What it does is it kind of turns the volume up and down quickly. And as you turn any of these down or up, it introduces that effect quicker and quicker. Roll mode, if you turn it to the right, introduces a roll. So just so you know in DJing what roll is it takes a small section of the song from the moment you turn it. It will be from the moment you turn it. It'll take a loop and it'll loop it. So it'll be like, right, let me see if I can do this. See what it did with the high? It took the hi-hat and it went, sped it up. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. It's the best I can do as a quick demonstration. And then add and cut, very kind of similar. Let me just play these. It's essentially a filter, right? So turn it to the left, it's a filter. Add, if you turn it to the right. Add is interesting. It kind of boosts the high slightly and it creates a kind of a dub echo. You can hear that? It adds like, it's a bit like the roll effect, if I'm honest. It kind of adds a bit of a dub echo to whatever you're doing, highs, mids, lows. So it could potentially add in a bit of a groove if you've got a hi-hat going and you add in a little bit of it. So it does that. Now, that is that area. That's everything you would need to know about that area there. In all honesty, the one you're probably going to use, Isolator, right? Now let's talk about this area here. So you'll see the ones at the top are in red, the ones at the bottom are in blue. And it actually says here, build up and breakdown, which gives you a clue that these effects here are good for a build to the drop, and these effects here are good for a breakdown. And in other words, kind of like not the build, because you could potentially use these in the drop if you wanted to as well. Although I understand why they say breakdown, because the breakdown is the part of the track which sometimes is a bit slow, and it gives you a bit more leeway to add in cool effects. Now, I'm not going to go into it. This is echo. You know, we all know what echo is. Bandpass filter echo, which is an echo with a filter built in, okay? Spiral up as you turn it up on the music. I'll play it. It adds in this kind of sound, okay? And then reverb up. This is actually a really interesting one. I actually really like this. Reverb up adds reverb, but as you add it in, it also pitches the reverb up. This is quite cool, I have to say. Let's have a listen to it. You have plenty money, 1922. Very cool. It pitches up the reverb. Very nice effect, that. And then you've got at the bottom here, you've got, well, this is a high pass filter and echo, very similar to that one, if I'm honest. Low pass filter and an echo, so you're either filtering up or filtering it down, although obviously it will only ever go one way. You've got crush echo, so it's echo with bit crusher on it, okay? Which is just a crunchy echo. Let's have a listen to this. If I'm honest, listening to that, it's not just a bit crusher and an echo. It's an echo, a bit crusher, and an LFO that's filtering up and down at the same time. It's a lot going on. I wouldn't personally use it myself. Spiral down, let's have a listen to it. So it's a very crunchy sound that kind of sounds a bit like a distortion, filters in and out. You just heard it then, it's like, not a massive fan of it either, wouldn't use it. And then reverb down, the opposite to that. So you add this in, the reverb will go down. That to me sounds like something I would use right at the end of the night if I wanted to just write, that's it, everybody knows the whole night's coming to an end now, reverb down, 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 music over, right? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily use that in a breakdown. Okay, so that's that. Now, let's talk about another part of this, which is debatably good. I don't know. It's this X section here, right? Where you can add in a kick, snare, clap. This is a funny one for me. I produce music, and it would really annoy me if somebody decided to put a big fat kick on top of one of my existing kicks. I've already put a kick in a song. I've already put a snare in the song. I've already put a clap in the song. If I wanted those louder, I'd have made them louder. What I don't want is some DJ to come along and go, I'm going to put a big over my track. I just don't like it. Now, the other interesting thing about this is there's a thing called overdub, which, believe it or not, you can drum a pattern and have it going. So let me actually just press, you have to have this playing at the same time. I wonder if I can turn it down, put dub echo on, and let's just hear it. So if you put overdub on, you can then tap in a drum beat, which will loop. So essentially, if you wanted to, you could put a full drum rhythm in, like I just did then. Again, I personally find it kind of pointless, because if the producer wanted there to be a drum loop, they would have put one in. Now, what you will find most people use this section for is roll mode. So if you put roll mode on and you select snare, and then, so what happens now, put on roll mode, oh, sorry, if you get snare and then put on hold, it will create a roll. Okay, so obviously what I meant before is roll and overdub did the thing which looped, but hold is the thing that creates the repetition, which will go in line with your BPM. And you can hit here and speed it up. Have a listen. You have to turn it off, so as soon as you put it in, it's on. Now, you can, of course, hit the kill switch. Now, the other interesting thing about this is you can pitch it up. Check it out. And that is the most overused feature of the RMX 1000. I just realized I may have called it DMX at some point in this video. Apologies if I did. And again, I have to tell you straight up, I'm not a fan of it. I've got tracks. Well, this track here, right? Have a listen to it. It doesn't have a big snare roll in it. This is one of my tracks. Let's go back to here and have a listen. There's no big ugly snare roll going on here. You had plenty money, 1922. Now check it out. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and put a big ugly snare roll over it and speed it up, and notice how it completely changes the track. This is not how I would have wanted the track to sound. Now, some of you might have gone, that's really cool, right? But I'm just telling you now, from my point of view, as somebody who produced that track, if I wanted a snare roll, I'd have put it in. So use that very, very sparingly. My personal take on this is if you've got a lot of interest in actually doing a deeper remix of a track and you actually like to start making your own dance music, don't do it with the RMX. Do it by learning music production. If any of you are interested in learning music production, I run a 6-month mentorship program where I take DJs who have never made music before and teach them everything they would need to know about producing high quality dance music that will grow your fan base and get you signed to record labels. Many of the students I work with have now got millions of streams on Spotify and are playing festivals, bigger clubs, because that's the thing that will really take your DJ career to that next level. So if you're interested, DM me the word main stage on Instagram. Just go on, send me a main stage and we can chat. And if you're a good fit, I'll jump on a phone call with you. The reason I asked you to send in main stage is because I get lots of messages on Instagram and I look out for the word main stage. So it's the highest chance of me having an actual chat with you. So do that if you're interested. Now, the one thing I haven't really talked much about is that there's 2 parameters here, subparameter and subparameter 2, that all have effects on these sounds, right? And they all do different things for each of them, and you can experiment, and in 2 seconds flat you'd understand what was going on. If I wanted to summarize it for you quite quickly, I would say this is generally how much of the sound you're introducing, and its default is at the center, but I always have it turned down because it also acts as the volume for noise, but the default is at the center. And then parameter 2 is, let's say for example this is how much of the effect. This would be like how quickly the effect is happening is an example. So as we saw with noise, this one over here, volume, and then this is that effect. So the rate is the word I've been looking for that. So there you go, guys. That is everything. Hopefully now, if you go and you're in front of these for the first time, you're going to have a much better idea of it. Another interesting thing for you, if you've got a device like this is called a howler device. And what I do is I'll plug this into the back of my mixer, which is slightly out of shot here. Let me come down. This will go into the back of my mixer, right? And then that can plug into my phone for high quality audio. You cannot plug a howler. This thing's called a howler, but there's different versions of this, right? You cannot plug it into this. So if you're doing a live DJ set, any effects you're adding here will not be recorded in high quality. What is coming out of your mixer down here is the thing that will be recorded. So that's another thing for you to bear in mind. That is everything. That's my A to Z of it. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully if you're ever in front of these things now, you'll have a lot more confidence. And yeah, speak to you soon.